Daniel, for 18 years now. Maybe 19. You lose track when every year feels like a faded version of the last. We used to be close. I think. We laughed more. We touched. We looked at each other, really looked. But somewhere between raising a child, paying bills, and just surviving the daily grind, we became strangers. Courteous roommates, at best. He works late now. Always has an excuse. Meetings. Reports. Some client who needs urgent attention. When he's home, he's glued to his phone or the television. I could be sitting right next to him crying, and I don't think he'd even notice unless I blocked the screen. And affection? That left our marriage years ago. Maybe it slipped away slowly, one forgotten kiss, one missed birthday, one night he turned his back to me in bed. Or maybe it disappeared all at once, and I just didn't realize until I reached out in the dark one night and felt nothing but cold sheets beside me. And yet, I stayed. Why? Because that's what we do, right? We stay. For the child. For the house. For the comfort of routine, even if it's suffocating. Now, Liam. My son. He's not Daniel's. I had him when I was barely 20, single, terrified, and just trying to keep us afloat. And even though life was hard, those early years with Liam were full of something real. Raw love. Sleepless nights and tear-streaked cheeks. Sure, but real connection. When I met Daniel, he stepped in. Provided for us. He wasn't cruel. He gave Liam his name, his roof, his version of fatherhood. But there was always a distance between them. A quiet wall. Daniel didn't get Liam, his sensitivity, his creativity, his habit of asking deep questions at the worst times. Liam was always a bit different. Thoughtful. Observant. Like he saw the world in layers no one else noticed. And he saw me. Even as a child, he'd bring me flowers he picked from the neighbor's yard, draw pictures of me as a superhero, whisper, "I love you," just because. That kind of love, it sticks to you. And when he went off to college last year, I felt it. That ache. That silence got louder without him here. But then, he came back. Said school wasn't working out. Too much pressure. Some things happened he didn't want to talk about. So I said, "Come home, sweetheart. We'll figure it out." And he did. He moved back in about 2 months before everything changed. And at first, it was simple. Familiar. We fell back into old rhythms. Watching movies late at night. Cooking together. His quiet laughter echoing down the hallway, it gave the house a heartbeat again. But slowly, things shifted. Not in a big, obvious way. No, it was subtle. The way his eyes lingered when I spoke. How he'd ask if I was okay, really okay. The way he hugged me a little longer than he used to. The way I found myself leaning into that warmth. God, I didn't even realize how starved I was for connection until someone finally offered it. Evenings at the dinner table were the worst. Daniel would sit across from us, fork scraping his plate, barely looking up. I'd ask how his day was, and he'd grunt some one-word answer, scrolling on his phone like we weren't even there. Liam would try to fill the silence, bless his heart. Talk about books, music, random thoughts that made me smile. And every once in a while, I'd look across the table and see his eyes on me, not just listening, watching. Like he was reading between the lines of what I wasn't saying. And I liked it. I started needing it. Then at night, I'd climb into bed next to Daniel. His back turned, already asleep, or pretending to be. And I'd lay there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. Feeling like a ghost in my own home. A woman no one noticed anymore. No one touched. No one desired. Except, maybe one person did. And that scared me. But it also made me feel alive. You know, they say danger doesn't always look like a red flag. Sometimes it looks like comfort. Like a warm smile. Like someone finally asking, "How was your day, Mom?" And actually waiting for the answer. I didn't see what was coming. I didn't want to. Because when your heart's been numb for so long, even the wrong kind of attention can feel like oxygen. And in that quiet, emotionally frozen house, where long hallways echoed with unspoken words, Liam's presence started to thaw something in me. Something I wasn't ready to admit. Not to him. Not to myself. Not yet. But the night he stood in my doorway, that's when the pieces started falling apart. Or maybe they were falling into place all along. I just hadn't noticed until it was too late. That night, I remember it so clearly. I couldn't sleep. I'd tossed and turned for what felt like hours, eyes wide open in the dark, listening to the low hum of the house around me, the soft ticking of the clock on the wall, the occasional creak of the floorboards adjusting as the temperature dropped. Daniel was snoring softly beside me, turned toward the wall, his usual position. His back, like always, was a wall of its own. Cold. Closed off. I stared up at the ceiling, tracing the familiar cracks, the faint shimmer of moonlight pushing in through the blinds. My chest felt tight. Not from fear, but from something I couldn't quite name. Restlessness? Loneliness? That eerie sense that someone was awake with me. And then, I heard it. A soft sound outside my bedroom door. Like the gentle rustle of socks brushing over wood. Not loud, not alarming, but enough to still my breath. I sat up, heart skipping a beat, not from fear, really, but that same tension you feel when you know you're not alone. I listened harder. Nothing. Silence. Then, a knock. Barely a tap. Like someone was unsure if they should knock at all. I whispered, "Hello?" And then I heard it, his voice. Quiet. Careful. "It's me, Liam." I slipped out of bed quickly, pulling my robe around me, and cracked the door open. He was standing there, shirtless. Just in his flannel pajama bottoms, arms folded over his chest like he was trying to protect himself. His hair was messy, sticking up like he'd just jolted awake. His eyes were tired but wide, uneasy. I couldn't sleep. I had a bad dream. I don't know why, but I felt like I needed to talk to someone. I opened the door a little wider and motioned him in before I even had time to think. He stepped inside quietly, and I closed the door behind him, leaving it just slightly cracked out of habit. He didn't sit on the bed, he stood near the edge, rubbing the back of his neck, glancing around the dimly lit room like he was someplace he wasn't sure he belonged in. "Do you want to sit?" I asked gently, nodding toward the chair by the window. He hesitated, then sat, but not in the chair. On the bed. At the very edge, far from where Daniel lay asleep. I moved to sit beside him, keeping space between us. "What was the dream about?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just looked down at his hands, fingers fiddling with a loose thread on the blanket. "I don't remember exactly. Just this feeling like something bad was going to happen. Like I was trapped. Like I couldn't breathe." I felt my heart clench. Because I knew that feeling. "I'm sorry you woke up feeling like that," I whispered. "I know those nights. Sometimes they stick with you even when you're awake." He nodded slowly, and when he finally looked up at me, there was something different in his eyes. Something that made my skin prickle, not in fear, but in awareness. It wasn't the look of a scared boy. It was the look of someone studying me. Someone seeing me not as a mother, not as a figure of comfort, but as a woman. And in that moment, the air in the room changed. Heavy. Still. Almost too quiet. I should have told him to go back to his room. God knows I should have. But something in me didn't. Something in me wanted to keep that moment going. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the way he was looking at me like I mattered, like I was something precious. Maybe it was the desperate hunger inside me to just be seen by someone. We sat like that for what felt like forever. No words, just silence stretching between us, filled with everything we weren't saying. Finally, I reached over and touched his hand. Just a simple gesture. A mother comforting her son. That's all it was supposed to be. But when our fingers touched, he didn't pull away. And neither did I. He looked down at our hands. Then up at me. Eyes soft, filled with something unspoken. I pulled my hand back quickly, heart thudding in my chest, breath caught in my throat. He stood slowly. "Sorry," he said quietly. "I shouldn't have come in. I didn't know where else to go." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I watched him walk to the door, pause, and glance back at me. That look again. Then he slipped out, closing the door gently behind him. The room felt colder after he left. The kind of cold that creeps under your skin. I sat there for a long time, staring at the door, trying to shake the feeling that something had just changed between us. Something I couldn't take back. And yet, a part of me didn't want to. After that night, nothing officially changed. No words were spoken about it. No lines were technically crossed. But I felt it. The shift. Like something had been opened that couldn't be closed again. I tried to brush it off. Tried to tell myself it was just a moment, a strange, emotionally raw moment between a mother and her son. He was vulnerable. I was tired. That's all. He's just worried about me, I told myself the next morning, as I poured my coffee and stared blankly at the sink full of dishes. He just had a bad dream. That's normal. And yet, when I turned around and saw Liam standing in the kitchen doorway, his hair still messy from sleep, wearing that same soft, open look on his face, my heart did something it hadn't done in a long time. It fluttered. He smiled gently and said, "Morning, Mom. You sleep okay?" And I froze for a second, not because the words were strange, but because they were so thoughtful, so intentional. Daniel hadn't asked me how I slept in years. I mumbled something like, "Yeah, I'm fine," and turned back to the coffee machine, pretending to focus on pouring. But my hands were trembling just a little. The rest of the day went on like usual. Daniel off to work without a word, Liam in his room, me floating through the house like a shadow. But I couldn't shake it. I kept replaying the night before in my head like a movie I couldn't pause. The way Liam looked at me. The warmth of his hand beneath mine. The silence. And what was worse, was realizing that a part of me missed it. That night, I found a cup of tea waiting for me on the kitchen counter. My favorite kind, chamomile with a hint of lavender. No note. No big gesture. Just there. I knew it was him. Daniel never paid attention to what I liked. If I told him I loved something, he'd forget by the next week. But Liam, he noticed. I sipped it slowly, sitting at the edge of the sofa, wrapped in my robe, and stared at the dimly lit hallway leading to the bedrooms. The house was quiet, but I could feel him. I could feel his presence. The awareness lingered in my chest like a weight, one I wasn't sure I wanted to let go of. And that's when the guilt started creeping in. Because nothing had happened, right? But my thoughts were no longer clean. I caught myself dressing more carefully in the mornings, fixing my hair before coming downstairs, checking how I looked in the hallway mirror. And I hated myself for it. Because what kind of mother starts caring what her son thinks about how she looks? But it wasn't just about him. It was about me. Feeling like I existed again. Like someone saw me. Like someone wanted me to feel okay. Even if it was Liam. One afternoon, I was cooking, just chopping vegetables for dinner, and he came up behind me, reached past to grab something from the shelf. His hand brushed my shoulder. Lightly. Barely there. But I flinched. Not because it was inappropriate, but because it sent a jolt through me. A spark. And I stood there for a full minute afterward, knife in hand, heart pounding in my ears, wondering what the hell was wrong with me. Was I imagining it? Reading into everything because I was so damn lonely? Or was I wanting it? The question made me sick. I told myself to stop. That I was spiraling. That this was dangerous. That I needed to be a mother, not some broken woman searching for scraps of affection wherever she could find them. But then Liam would walk into the room, smile that quiet smile, and ask if I wanted to watch something together later. And all those rational thoughts melted like snow under sunlight. I kept asking myself over and over, is this just comfort? Is this just two lonely souls clinging to each other in a house that forgot how to love? Or is it something worse? And the part that scared me the most was that I didn't want to answer that question. Because answering it meant facing something inside me I didn't want to meet. That part of me that wasn't just a mother or a wife, but a woman. A woman who had been ignored, dismissed, touched out, worn down, and left to rot in the corners of her own life. And now, someone was opening the curtain. Not just any someone. My son. But I wasn't ready to let go of the warmth. Not yet. So I sat with the shame. Let it fill the quiet spaces. Tried to swallow it down every night when I laid beside my husband, his back turned, as always, and stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment that wasn't supposed to mean anything, but somehow meant everything. After that night, things started happening more often. Quiet things. Subtle things. Things that, if you looked at them on their own, might not mean anything at all. But when you line them up, moment by moment, breath by breath, you see the storm building. Liam started knocking on my door again. At first, it was maybe once a week. Late at night, after Daniel had already fallen asleep. It was always something small. A question about laundry. Or if I had any extra toothpaste. One time, he asked if I remembered that movie we used to watch when he was little, the one with the space robot and the lonely little girl. I'd open the door just a crack, robe tight around me, heart already racing. And he'd stand there, soft-eyed, like he had every right to be there. Like we were sharing something, unspoken. I'd tell him, good night, gently but firmly, and he'd nod, smile faintly, and walk away. But the air would thicken with each visit. The air between us changed. And then there was the night I fell asleep on the couch. It had been a long day. I was drained. I think I'd cried in the laundry room earlier, hiding behind the dryer so Daniel wouldn't hear me. I don't even remember what movie was on. Just the faint flicker of the screen, my body curling into the throw pillow, exhaustion pulling me under. And then, I felt it. A soft touch, gentle fingers brushing my hair back from my face. I opened my eyes slowly, heart thudding. It was Liam, kneeling beside the couch, looking at me like I was something fragile, something sacred. I didn't speak. Neither did he. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear and whispered, "You looked cold." Then he draped the blanket over me and stood up slowly. Walked back down the hallway. Left me there with my heart pounding out of my chest. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just laid there, paralyzed. Not because of fear. Because of how good it felt. And how wrong that was. Later, in the safety of my bed, I tried to talk myself out of what had happened. Told myself he was just being kind. Gentle. He wasn't thinking the things I was afraid he was thinking. It was me. It had to be me. My fault. My projection. My broken, starving heart playing tricks on my mind. But something deep down said otherwise. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen, humming softly, making scrambled eggs. I tried to act normal. Tried to ask about his plans for the day. He didn't say much. Just looked at me in that way again. The look that lingered a second too long. That felt like it peeled back layers of me I didn't know were still visible. I tried to pull away from it. Tried to put my energy into fixing things with Daniel. I asked him if he wanted to go out for dinner, just the two of us. Somewhere nice. I even put on makeup, curled my hair, wore the blouse he used to compliment back when he actually noticed me. And he looked at me like I was a stranger. "Why this sudden date night thing?" he asked, his tone dry. I shrugged. Just thought we could use some time together. We haven't gone out in a while. He sighed, barely looked up from his email. I'm tired. It's been a long week. Maybe next time. Next time. Always next time. Never this time. I went upstairs, locked the bathroom door, and sat on the edge of the tub crying softly into a hand towel. Not because of the rejection. I was used to that by now. But because I realized something terrifying. A part of me didn't care anymore. And another part was already drifting toward someone else. That weekend, I met up with an old friend for coffee. Sarah, someone I hadn't seen in months. She asked how things were, and I said what I always said. Fine. Busy. You know how it is. But she saw through it. Like she always did. So I told her a little. Not everything. Just enough. I said I'd been feeling disconnected. That I was confused. That I'd been getting attention from someone I wasn't expecting, and it made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. She paused, stirred her coffee slowly, and said, "Don't mistake emotional hunger for love. Starvation makes anything taste sweet." I didn't say anything back, because I knew she was right. But I also knew it was too late. That night, I found a note, folded neatly on my pillow. Liam's handwriting. Small. Careful. It said, "I know you feel it too." No name. No signature. Just that. 7 words that sent my heart into a spiral. 7 words that confirmed everything I was too afraid to admit. And as I stood there, staring at that piece of paper, hands trembling, breath caught in my chest, I realized I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't undo. Not with reason. Not with prayer. Not with shame. Because whatever this was between us, it was already breathing. Already growing. And I had no idea how to stop it. It was just past 2 a.m. when I woke up. At first, I didn't know why. There wasn't a sound. No storm. No phone buzzing. Just stillness. But something in my body jolted me awake. Like it knew something was off before my mind caught up. I blinked against the dark, trying to adjust my eyes. The hallway light was off. Daniel was asleep beside me, his breath steady, slow, unbothered. And then, I saw it. A shape in the doorway. Still. Silent. Watching. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Or worse, losing my mind. But then the figure stepped forward slowly, just enough for the moonlight to catch his face. Liam. Standing in my room. Barefoot. Quiet. Eyes wide with something between pain and longing. I sat up too fast, heart pounding. "Liam, what are you doing?" I whispered, voice barely audible. He didn't answer at first. Just stood there, staring at me like he was trying to memorize my face. "I couldn't sleep," he finally said. His voice was low, shaky. "I kept thinking about that note," I said quickly, trying to shift the air, make it lighter, pretend this was still normal. "You shouldn't have, I meant every word," he interrupted. And my whole body went still. He stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough to be inside the room now. "I can't pretend anymore," he said. "Liam, stop," I whispered, voice trembling. "No. Please. Just let me say it," he said, his voice cracking. "I care about you. Not just as a son. I know how that sounds. I know it's wrong. But I've tried to bury it. I've tried to push it down. And every time I look at you, it gets harder. You're not just my mom. You're the only person who sees me, who listens, who makes me feel like I matter." Tears were welling in his eyes now. And mine. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I was frozen in that moment, caught between horror and heartbreak. Because the truth was, a part of me had been waiting for him to say it. Not because I wanted to hear it, but because I knew it was coming. And once it was out loud, there was no going back. "Liam," I whispered, barely able to breathe. "You don't know what you're saying." He shook his head slowly. "I do. I know it's messed up. But you're the only person I feel close to anymore. I don't care if it's wrong. I needed you to know." The room felt like it was closing in around us. Every second was thick with unspoken thoughts, burning shame, and this heavy, electric grief that I couldn't escape. I looked into his eyes that once looked up at me from a child's face, now filled with something entirely different. And for a second, I hated myself. Because I didn't scream. I didn't yell. I didn't push him out of the room. I just sat there, frozen, tears on my cheeks. Heart pounding so loudly, I was afraid Daniel might wake up just from the sound of it. And then, footsteps. In the hallway. "Daniel." I turned my head quickly. The bedroom door was still slightly open, just an inch. I saw the shadow of him walking by. He didn't stop. Didn't look in. Just walked past. Back toward the bathroom. Or maybe the kitchen. I don't even know. But that split second, seeing his silhouette, feeling Liam's eyes still on me, that's the moment it hit me. Everything had already changed. The line between right and wrong had blurred so quietly, so slowly, that by the time we stood at the edge, I didn't even realize I was looking down. And the worst part? Some part of me didn't want to look away. After that night, I stopped being able to look Liam in the eyes. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. And the weight of what almost happened, of what was said, was now a presence in the house. Thick, suffocating, like smoke after a fire no one wants to admit ever started. I avoided him. I started waking up earlier, locking the bathroom door when I showered, keeping the bedroom door closed and pretending I was asleep when he passed by. I kept my movements small, mechanical. Folding laundry, washing dishes, wiping counters that weren't even dirty. Anything to keep my hands busy. Anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But it didn't work. The silence between us screamed louder than words ever could. Liam tried. I'll give him that. Tried to make eye contact during dinner. Tried to ask how my day was when I passed him in the hallway. One afternoon, he even stood outside the door while I folded towels in the laundry room. Mom, can we just talk? His voice was soft. Careful. Still that same Liam, gentle, sensitive, always watching for cracks. But I didn't answer. Didn't even move. I just waited until his footsteps faded away. Because I knew, if I opened that door, if I opened that conversation, I might not be strong enough to close it again. Daniel started noticing. Not everything, but enough. He asked me if I was feeling okay one morning. Said I looked pale. Asked why I hadn't touched my toast. I shrugged. Said it was nothing. Just tired. But the truth was, I hadn't been eating much. Food tasted like ash. Sleep felt like punishment. My body buzzed with anxiety every night, thoughts spinning so fast I felt sick. I'd lay awake until sunrise, eyes wide, heart racing, haunted by every glance, every word, and the mirrors. I couldn't stand to look in them, because all I saw was her. That woman. The one who let her son say those things. Who didn't push him away. Who sat there in silence, drinking in every forbidden word like it was the last glass of water in a desert. I avoided my own reflection like it held a truth I wasn't ready to face. But Liam, he wasn't done. He still believed in what he felt. Or maybe he was just as lost as I was. One evening, I was in the kitchen alone. Daniel had gone out to meet a coworker. Liam came in quietly, barefoot again, like always. I didn't turn around. Just kept rinsing plates that were already clean. Then I felt him behind me. Not touching. Just there. Close. His voice was barely a whisper. You wanted it too, he said. I saw it in your eyes. My entire body went cold. I gripped the edge of the sink like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to say he was wrong. That it was all in his head. But nothing came out. Because deep down, a part of me knew he wasn't completely wrong. A part of me had wanted to be wanted. A part of me had leaned into the attention. And that part one buried so far down, I almost believed it wasn't real. But Liam, he dragged it to the surface. And now it wouldn't go back. I didn't respond to him. Didn't even turn around. He stood there for a few seconds more, breathing softly. Then, walked away. And I stayed frozen, staring down at the soapy water, heart pounding like a drum inside my chest. Was he wrong? Or was he just saying out loud what I had tried so hard to bury? There are moments when you stare at yourself so long, you start to wonder if the person looking back was always there. Or if she only showed up when everything else started falling apart. That's where I've been. Staring into my own soul and not recognizing the woman behind my own eyes. A mother, a wife, a woman who crossed every line she thought she'd never even approach. And the truth is, I don't know how it got this far, or when it started. Was it that night he brushed my hair back on the couch? Or the first time he asked how I slept? Or was it even earlier, long before Liam came back home, when I first started vanishing inside this marriage? Daniel used to make me feel like someone. A partner. A woman he chose. Now he walks past me like a lamp. Like a sink. Useful. Familiar. But hollow. We haven't made love in nearly a year. And when I tried to touch him last week, just placed my hand gently on his back while he was lying in bed,